All right. Welcome to the Space Between Words. I'm here with Eric Johnson.
And I'm here with Shayna Acosta.
Yes. How are you today?
I'm doing great.
Yeah?
I'm doing really great, actually.
Cool.
And I'm actually going to go hit the course this afternoon.
Wow.
So I'm excited about that.
You love golf.
Oh, gosh. It's so bad.
Really? When did this love begin of golf?
There's a meme out there that shows a little league team, baseball.
Okay.
And like hockey, like a kid playing hockey, like, little league hockey. I don't know what it's called, but anyways. And the memes had pictures of these kids on playing baseball and hockey as kids. And it said, these are guaranteed golf addicts in 30 years.
Oh, interesting.
So I played baseball.
Okay.
And so standing sideways, hitting a ball, I had just always loved it. But what golf for me, I fell in love with golf in high school, played on a club, not a team. And then I laid it down because we had kids. Time consuming, bit expensive. But about 4 years ago, I told myself, when my youngest graduates high school, I am all in.
Oh.
So that was 4 years ago.
Okay.
And it is bad.
It's bad.
It is so bad, Shayna. Like, I don't want to exaggerate here, but it's in the realm of 70 to 90% of my thought life.
Oh, wow.
Revolves
I love
around
this
it in
confession.
some capacity. Yeah.
Wow.
But it's actually really good for my mind because
Okay.
I'm a little OCD.
Okay.
A little might be a little
I don't know,
interchangeable.
just a little. Yeah.
I have some traits.
You have some traits.
But I can aim it
okay.
at the game.
Got
so
it.
I can let it all out there and it affects nobody.
Except
it affects
for you.
just me.
Yeah.
So it's actually a really healthy thing. And I love sports. So anyway.
70%.
Yeah,
of your
so I'm going to
thoughts.
go play golf this afternoon with a couple of friends that I haven't seen in a couple of months. And so I'm doing great.
Wow.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Yeah?
I'm not playing golf.
You're not playing
I need
golf.
to figure out what that is for me.
What is your hobby?
Yeah. I dance.
Oh, maybe we should dedicate an episode to hobbies.
Maybe that's what we should do.
We should do. Let's talk about that someday.
Yeah. Okay. Hobbies. That's that's scary to me because I don't know if I have a hobby. I need to figure that out.
I have one that you could get into.
Oh, I don't think that's me. Do people?
Maybe wait till your kid get older.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe. I just don't, hold on. Before we go back, I still have to. You think hockey players will become?
Well, if you think about it, and it's true, a lot of baseball players love golf.
I get baseball. I can't see.
Well,
I grew up in
it's
hockey.
a lot of hockey players. Also, a cricket.
Cricket. I could see cricket.
So I have friends from Australia, New Zealand, and that part of the world. And when they get into golf, they love it. And they actually transitioning from baseball to golf is really hard.
Yeah.
Because fundamentally, the baseball swing does not work well in a golf swing.
Okay.
You think it would, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
Hockey's a little better, but I would say cricket. Transitioning from a cricket to playing golf you're actually much better.
Yeah.
The fundamentals of the swing.
Interesting.
So I have a friend who I coveted for a couple of years because he played cricket a lot. So his fundamentals of the golf swing were way more on par.
Yeah.
Ooh, par.
Par.
On par.
Ba-dum.
On par.
Yes.
In line with a proper golf swing.
Interesting.
So I had to go to a coach and say, I need you to deconstruct my baseball swing. I need you to get rid of it. I don't play baseball anymore.
You got a
And this
coach?
was 4 or 5 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So I went to a coach and he said, all right, we're going to start from the ground up. And so literally gave me everything from feet to knees to hip exercises and drills. This is where my OCD just gets
I love
fed.
this. Okay.
And rebuild from the ground, literally from my bottom of my body to the top. Had to rebuild it because it was all baseball fundamentals. So anyways.
That's interesting.
So I don't think I'll ever go into a batting cage again for baseball because I don't want to mess up my golf swing.
You don't want to mess up your swing.
All. I'm like, so.
I have to confess that I've never actually ever in my life played golf or even done the what are the restaurant where you just
Top golf?
I've never done that. I'm so scared.
We should totally do a team day at Top Golf.
Maybe.
And I can just laugh.
I know it would because I'm afraid that I'm going to swing and I'm not even going to hit the ball. Or have you
It's
seen
a real thing.
Yeah, and then people swing too hard and they fall off into the net.
Into the net, yeah.
That's
Can we do that? I want to see that happen.
Terrifying. Gosh.
Maybe
times.
we'll dedicate an episode to golf.
Oh,
There's
yes.
actually a lot of
I
life
love
principles.
this.
There's a lot of life principles.
And I'll let you talk.
It might be the least viewed, least
Yes.
listened to, but it would still be fun. So
It'll feed.
anyway,
it'll feed
so
you.
recently,
Okay.
Shayna, you shared this story
I did.
about rhinos.
Yes.
that were really fascinating and quite compelling. And I'd love for this episode to be around that story, and we're going to kind of segue into some other topics.
Yeah.
But could you kind of tell the story, the Rhino story that you shared recently?
I love this. I hope people listening are going to laugh that it went from golf to rhinos. I think that should be the title, Golf to Rhinos.
Golf and rhinos. Do rhinos golf?
Do rhinos golf?
Okay, we need to keep going.
We're going.
Tell the story.
So I recently read this article, and it was actually in New York Times, which I love. And they were telling the story that rhinos were becoming extinct, and there was an issue with that because they were being poached. Mm-hmm. And because a lot of the poachers were killing them only for their horns, that's what was coveted, and so they would kill the rhino just for one particular piece, nothing else. And I think that's crazy. I mean, that's kind of blows my mind.
It's so sad.
It is so sad. I mean, like not to eat, not to sell anything else, just the horn. And so a bunch of people got together and they were like, how do we save the rhinos? And they found that obviously the horn is just like a toenail. So clipping it off doesn't harm the rhino at all, which I did not know. Mm-hmm. So they decided to start putting the rhinos down and asleep and sawing off their horns and then obviously waking them back up, so that it would keep them protected and prevented from poachers killing them for their horns.
So they could get the horn but not kill the animal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So I just thought, wow, that's an interesting thought. That's creative. I thought that's cool. Except my first question was, what is a rhino without a horn, right? And because going to the zoo, you see that. You can see them in the distance, the horns, and you're like, that's a rhino.
Totally.
And when I brought this up to our church and I asked them, I think somebody said it was just a hippo after that, like a sad hippo. And so what they found was that it started to work, like, yes, it was helping the poachers not kill the rhinos. But then something started to happen that it went into detail that these rhinos stopped hanging out with each other. They stopped even protecting their territory because they found out that it literally said that rhinos, it affected their confidence. I'm reading this so that you guys can get this right. It literally it shrunk their territories 82% of their territory.
So the territory that they would roam
Yes.
or own, so to speak,
Yeah.
when they got their horns cut off, it shrank
It shrank
82%.
82%.
Wow.
Because they didn't know how to function. They actually said that they were quite embarrassed to be associated with other rhinos. And so that started making me think, like, okay, like, can we put that into us? Because I think about, like, when we kind of put things onto us or a title of who we are, and if that thing is stripped of us, then what would happen to our identity as well? And so that just started me going down the journey of identity. And it's crazy because I feel like going and hanging out with this generation a lot, it's become almost trendy to put things into their DNA, like to attach things that are not originally their design into their DNA. So, for instance, I was reading a book recently, and there was a quote, and I want to make sure I get this right. It says, currently, fear has become, in some ways, slightly fashionable. It was a guy by the name of Peter Stern. And I thought that was interesting because here's this, I actually, this is me. You love golf, but I love, like, researching, like, what they actually mean. So I looked up the word fashionable, mm-hmm. and it literally is like time of something you're proud to put on. And so he's saying that this generation is literally proud to put on fear and to walk in fear. And so I started like, man, that's a crazy thought of where we are. So
yeah, it's interesting. You do hear more in conversation in people's vocabularies of anxiety, fear, ADHD.
Yeah.
You go down these list of things, and obviously there's some evidence of that being in people's life, but it's become how we introduce ourselves to people. And it's become a common conversation about our struggles. So it's become almost cool to have struggles.
Yeah.
And that's become the human discourse in relationship is more about that, about that identity.
Yeah, no, I feel like that's very common. I mean, working with, this next generation coming up a lot, that's so common for them to introduce themselves and say, hey, my name is this, and I have ADHD, I have anxiety, I have depression or disorder, whatever it is. And I'm not saying that those aren't like real struggles, but it's literally become who we are instead of something that we're battling. They've just accepted it. And I think what's interesting, going back to the Rhinos, is that when you take away who you are, the very essence of who you are, then you don't know how to have community. You don't know how to defend territory. I mean, like, it's real. It becomes a struggle.
You get reduced.
You get reduced.
And it's fascinating. 82%. I mean, they're literally getting to reduce to the space that they actually exist. So in other words, they have no other spaces in life.
No.
Where they're roaming and they're being who they are. So that translates into the conversation around manhood.
Yeah.
Conversation around womanhood.
I know.
Conversation around humanity. And how much it'd be fascinating to do some more studies on this, but how much of our lives have been reduced down. So we're not actually doing very much because we don't know who we really are.
Yeah, because if we go into the idea of like, we were created in God's image, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, think about that. We were created in something that is perfect, right? Like, we were created in his image. And he spoke us into existence and all of this. And so has what we have just deemed into our DNA as far as like, or woven into it, like, oh, I have, anxiety when I'm around crowds. Well, that keeps me from walking into a crowded area, which would keep me from maybe bringing who God created me to be in that area where I was supposed to be. So what allowing that to become a part of who I am, what is that keeping me from? Or what am I not walking into because of those things?
Yeah, because being created by God is directly connected to your existence.
Yeah.
So the ability to create is so deeply connected to your existence.
Yeah.
And I was just with a group of people last night and talking about, I don't want anybody in this room to struggle with if they're creative.
Yeah.
I only want you to struggle with, what do I create?
Wow.
And it's connected to this because I think our identity is so, I don't know if we know how deep it is into the idea that we get to create. Because when you look at, what's fascinating too is God is first identified as creator in Scripture.
Yeah.
Before he identified as the Father, before he's identified as the provider, all these different beautiful names around God. The first name he's identified as is creator.
Yeah.
So the very essence of who God is, he's created us and the ability to create. So when we talk about what did God create? Well, in Genesis, we see he created beauty. He created life. He created everything that we know in existence, at least started it, and it's been creating ever since. Yeah. So we have to ask ourselves the question, if we believe God created us, then the next thought is this. Then what did he create? He created beauty. He created life. So then I would propose that we are actually designed as humans to create beauty and to create life.
Yeah.
And to take, when you look at the Scripture, Genesis 1, the Spirit of God hovered over emptiness and void.
Yeah.
So he took something from nothing and created something. Now, we don't have the ability as humans to make something from nothing, but he's given us material. He's given us substances. He's given us things to actually, so everything we see, like this table, these laptops, our clothes, everything we see would actually in another form. But because of human creativity, because of the image of God, we're able to take a material and because of an idea, create it into something else. So we know the essence of being a human is to create beauty, to create life. And so what we're talking about today, that story is, are we creating anxiety?
Yeah.
Are we identifying by all these struggles? And like you said, it's not an issue if you don't have them.
Yeah.
But how do you see yourself? What is your perception of your own identity?
Yeah.
And that's the challenge because it's become fashionable, it's become cool, it's become trendy. If you don't have a therapist, you're part of the out crowd.
Yeah.
If you have a therapist, you're part of the in crowd. And I'm for therapist. I have one, but it's not something we should my therapist, our conversations are so much around our struggles, the parts of us that need healing, that need restoration. So let's talk now. What would you say? How do you transition from identifying yourself and even in your own language, vocabulary to other people, your friend, moving from what you struggle with and moving into what you were designed to be, like getting a new identity.
Yeah. I think the first thing is mindset, which we always tend, even in this podcast, we're always talking about, it's got to start with you first. But I think it's mindset, because when I get sick with a cold, I immediately want to get rid of it. Like, I'm like, this is not, I don't think that this has become who I am. I just am like, hey, I got to get rid of this cold so I can move on. And I think that's the first thing for me that I feel like has to shift, is that we have to stop seeing these things as things that are going to be permanent in our lives, and see them as things that we can conquer. And so just changing that mindset alone of being like, okay, yes, like I'm battling this right now, but it's not who I was created to be. It's not what was put into me in my original design. And so shifting that mindset first, I think is crucial.
Yeah, there's a story in the Bible where David, in the Old Testament, and David is looking for a weapon. And he goes into the temple and he talked to the priest, and he said, I need a weapon. I'm summarizing the story, of course. And they say, well, Goliath's sword is right over there. And so David goes over and grabs the sword. Now, he had already killed Goliath many years before. So now he's kind of in the fugitive space of his life. So he grabs the sword, and it becomes his sword for the remainder of his life. So the principle here is the very weapon that was designed to kill him actually became his greatest weapon.
Exactly.
And so when we say phrases like take the material of your life and create beauty from it, it's abstract, but what it really means is the things that are trying to come at you.
Yeah.
Anxiety, fear, control, manipulate, all these things that we deeply struggle with as humans and the human life experience, those things can actually become your greatest weapon. So this is why it's common to see someone that, maybe struggled with, let's use an extreme example, drug addiction or alcoholism, or maybe even struggle with suicide. When they have a transition moment from this is no longer who I am, and in our world it's an encounter with God, like God meets that person and their new identity, all those beautiful things that we read about in Scripture. When they actually transition, guess who they are passionate about helping? People that struggle in those same areas.
People that struggle.
So when we say take the material of your life, we're actually saying, to go find that weapon, that sword that was trying to kill you and diminish you, oppress you, and make you smaller, and to reduce, for the Rhino story, to reduce your world 82% down.
Yeah.
That thing, whatever that is, your future has a high likelihood it's around helping to people that are struggling with the same thing.
Yeah.
And so some of the very things that are coming at us, actually the very things that are going to become our greatest weapon.
Man.
And so if you're dealing with fear, guess what? One of your greatest weapons is probably going to be peace.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with anxiety, probably one of the greatest weapons is going to be a sound mind.
Yeah.
A mind that is healthy and it knows how to navigate the complexities of life. So I think we can start looking at these different things. And so helping people to recognize that this is actually something trying to kill you and diminish you. Let's move into a space where okay, how does it become my greatest weapon?
Yeah. I love that.
It starts with mindset, like you said.
Mindset.
Is there anything else that you would encourage someone to move from one identity to a more beautiful identity?
Yeah. So I also, I'm going to go from the biblical side of things, the renewal of your mind. Like, I think that's really interesting because sometimes it's hard to break that first mindset of like, this is who I am, because you've lived in it for so long, right? Like it's become, something that's attached to you. So when it talks about the renewal of your mind, like actually, every book that I read of someone that's been successful, they start off by, and I know there's a lot of different studies, but like writing who you want to be, who you are, and putting that in front of you, affirmations, whatever that is. I mean, I remember like reading a book of a really successful man that like would wake up and he would have written things on his ceiling. So he woke up to reading those things of how he wanted to be or who he wanted to be. So believing and putting yourself also like with community as well. And I know we've talked about this before, but I'm such a huge advocate for finding really healthy community who can speak into you when you don't know how to fight or how to pick up that weapon yet. Or does that make sense? Yeah. And finding people that can say, hey, that's not who you are, so that eventually you start believing it. I mean, can we getting personal here, right? Like, walking with you guys for the last, going on 3 years. We're going. This is our 3rd year. It's so good.
Some time.
We're getting some time. But one of the things, speaking was a huge, scary thing for me. And being around people that believe in you and give you opportunity, whether you fail or not, is huge, because then it creates this, belief in yourself eventually that, I actually can do this, but I couldn't have done it without people around me that believed it. So I think finding that community, and that's what makes me so sad about these rhinos. But they're losing their community, and they're losing their ability to even defend who they are, because they have been reduced to.
And sometimes
not
in community, you can refine your identity.
Exactly.
So I would tell people, if you're surrounded with people that are only sympathizing with your struggles,
that's it.
You have to surround yourself with other people.
That's it.
Now, friends are great for empathy, sympathy. Yeah. There's a place for that. But if that's the only voice you have in your life, as far as community that's only empathizing or sympathizing, then you've got to find other people to surround yourself with that are going to call you out into that.
Yeah.
And sometimes you may not be able to stir up your own hope, but at least let someone that has hope influence you.
Yeah.
And so that's what would be my advice to people. Like, I know there are seasons in my life like I can work up hope, but it's fake. So I need to get around someone. So Candace would be someone for me, or a close friend of mine. I'm like, okay, this is where I'm at. Can you give me some hope? Like, give me some, help me see the future differently. Because right now it looks pretty bleak.
Yeah.
So surrounding yourself, community is huge. So I'm repeating myself, but surround yourself with people that actually don't just empathize or sympathize. They actually call you up, they call you out, and they confront you.
Yeah.
And one of the challenges with internal struggles, everything about them, the DNA in that struggle is to get you isolated. Is to get you into a space where you're all alone. And we all know when we're isolated, that's when real damage can really begin to take place.
Yeah.
And so I would say, if you feel the urge to be isolated and to get disconnected and move into that direction, then you need to be willing to fight the battle to do the exact opposite.
Yeah.
And I deal with a lot of men. I deal with people, but I would talk to men. Men have this internal thing of I need to suck it up. I got to do it on my own. My dad told me this is how you deal with issues. Put my boot. You just kind of get this manly attitude. And I, for the last number of years, have been telling men, if you can't do it by yourself, then ask for help.
Yeah.
At least ask for help.
Yeah.
And because most guys, but the 10 years goes by, and they think they've gotten stronger. No, they've just gotten more hard-hearted.
Yeah.
They got more calloused.
Dang.
They got more disattached from their emotion, from their mind. And they're like, I'm good. I don't struggle with that anymore. Yeah, but you're numb. You're flat. Numb. You're dead.
Yeah.
And so I think this is a really beautiful conversation for people to realize your struggles are not your identity.
Yeah.
It's not who you are. There's another story in the Bible where there's a blind man, and Jesus healed the blind man. And in the story, there's one line that says he threw his cloak. So if we can picture this blind man had a garment, that from my understanding in that era, in those days, you were identified as a blind man with a certain kind of cloak. I've heard some different scholars talk about this. And so that cloak was his identity. It was identifying, this is the blind man. So when he gets healed, when his eyes are open, he throws his cloak. And it's a beautiful imagery. It's a real story. It's a beautiful imagery of okay, that's my old identity. I now have to let it go.
Yeah.
So I wonder how many times we need to literally take off these garments that we've clothed ourselves. Everybody knows, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And you want to start moving into the future, you have to literally throw those garments, those cloaks, those identities to the side. And so all these identity, anxiety, fear, all these things that we're talking about, okay, for some it's okay, I no longer associate with that.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I numb that part of me. Doesn't mean I don't ever struggle with it. Just mean that is no longer how I want you to see me.
Yeah.
I want to see myself someone that creates beauty, creates life, and creates a future.
Yeah. And I think also not letting those become safety nets, because I know in my own life, when I allow those things, even if I've taken them off, if I even define it as in my past, I'm scared to speak because of X, Y, Z, then it gives me an out, and I can lean on that. And I think that's what is my encouragement to people that are listening is not letting it even become an out. Like, at some point, the circus, they talk about the people that like, what is even that called anymore? Where they swing. Trapeze,
yeah.
Yes. So like, at some point they eventually like get rid of the net and you're like, oh my gosh. It's scary, but it also creates that like awe factor of the circus.
The Coldplay lyric, the spot between the two trapezes.
Oh, yeah.
Of letting go of one and getting to
the next one.
I had to bring a Coldplay.
I love that. It's great. They're worthy to be quoted. But yeah, I think there's that moment of like, I'm scared, but I don't want this to define me, even create a safety net for me because I want to move on. I want to grow.
Yeah.
And if you're listening, I think for me, it's like knowing that we need your story because just like you were saying with your weapon is a story. And I think that's it. Like if you stay in that mindset, then we miss out on the things of setting other people free and the very thing that maybe God created you to be. And we need your story and that's essential. So don't let these things keep you back and hold you back because we need you to move on. We need you to pick up your sword.
I believe our identity is centered around creating beauty, creating life, being one that brings hope into every situation.
Yeah.
It's moving the needle in that direction. And so let's be a people that fight for identity that does that.
Yeah.
And let's be a people that embrace this reality. I'm actually here to create a future that's beautiful and full of life.
Yeah.
And let's fight for that. Let's be willing to give our life to that. And let's not settle for these subpar identities that have become so fashionable and so cool.
That's it.
So
man.
That's great, Shayna.
No, I think you need to say that again. Do not don't settle for the subpar.
Yeah.
Like that's it. I think especially this generation that's coming up, like that's not who you have to be. You don't have to settle for that. That's big.
Yeah, you don't have to settle for that.
Yeah.
My daughters, when they were young, they were about 12, 13 years old. We had a kind of a rite of passage moment. And we built this beautiful moment with, different friends, all adult friends in their life. Some were family and some were just friends. And we made this agreement with them. It was kind of a rite of passage. And the agreement essentially built around the idea, never settle for second best when it comes to your husband.
Wow.
When it comes to options in life.
Yeah.
When it comes to school, when it comes to big decisions. Never think you have to settle for second best. Don't settle for the subpar things in life. And so I think there's something about that. I'm not going to settle for this identity of just struggling through life. I'm going to begin to move towards an identity that is hopeful, that's full of life, that can take boring material and make something out of it. And that's the kind of people I believe this world needs for sure.
We need.
But it's, and then in that, you begin to find out why you're alive.
Yeah.
You begin to like, I'm actually designed for this. This is what makes me wake up in the morning with an excitement for the day. This is what makes me excited for 2024, 2025. It's just like reality of I am designed to take mundane things in life and create beauty out of it, to make something of it. So let's be those kind of people.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Well, that was fun. That
was fun. All right. Well,
thanks for the Rhino story.
Yeah.
I don't know what we're going to call this episode.
I still think it needs to be Golf and Rhinos.
Golf and Rhino. We'll just do that. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening today, and hope you have a great week. And we will see you next time.
Yeah. Bye.